Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased and honored to bring you a charming poet from Quebec City, Miss Georgiana Mărculescu, a wonderful young poet. And Georgiana, the first thing I always like to ask my poet guests is, when did you discover that you were a writer, that you were a poet?
That's a tough one.
Yeah, I
Um,
only ask tough questions.
um, I would say since forever, but I actually, I started writing around the age of 10, very poor, extremely poor poetry. By the age of 14, I refined my style. And I was lucky enough that my poetry got to be revised by a person that right now he's another poet, Dumitru Crudu. From the workshop of Vlad Ionita in Moldavia. Back in the day, he used to live in the same city with us, and actually we hosted him uh, for a while, and I took I gathered all my courage. I took all my texts at the age of 14, and I said, "Here you go. This is what I wrote the last 1 year," and it's like I'm courageous enough and brave enough to show you. So he actually was very serious in revising the text, and one of the texts became a published text at the age of 14.
Bravo,
Uh,
bravo.
Thank you, thank you. The theme was pretty heavy. It was about death, and my history teacher back at that point, he passed away in this absurd accident, and I was very frustrated, and I wanted to express all my grief and all my emotion. And I wrote this text about him, and even to this day, I cannot, even if I want to, I cannot basically redo the same images. Even now, I'm kind of wowed at what I was able to write at the age of 14. Obviously, afterwards, after Dumitru Crudu read my text and gave the commands. I took it a little bit more serious. I got the text published, so I had more skin in the game, the way we say it, and I got better and better. But I didn't have a personal style. I was looking for myself, and it took years and years to find my style and to build it.
I'm curious. A lot of times when we start writing young, we sort of pick out an area to write about, whether it be family or friends or our emotions or uh, popular issues. Was there a theme that seemed consistent to you when you were a young writer?
Um, I guess self-discovery, processing emotion. The theme that would reunite all the text, it would be how I was able to process emotion. And basically, poetry at that point was a way for me to express my emotion, but still express it in my own way, in my own terms, without a lot of access from the outside. As you know, poetry can be a little bit cryptic at times, and I took advantage of that characteristic, of that feature. So yeah, I basically, it's like writing my own diary, but in poetic form, in extremely poetic form, to protect myself and to understand myself. But it was about the themes. the area of themes got larger and larger with age.
Yeah, I understand. I was very taken with Poe, Edgar Allan Poe, when I was young, and I would go into a closet, no lights on, just crack the door enough so I could have enough light to write with. Then I wrote a lot of what you might call 19th century heroic stuff. I
Okay.
was taken by Homer's Iliad very young and inspired by this massive, massive poem, and with its heroic story and its colorful treatment of Greek gods and goddesses and the heroes and villains in the Trojan War. Um, Now, you had the good fortune to have a mentor who appreciated you and recognized you. That must have been tremendous. So many poets labor, if you will, without any support. Was your family a little supportive too, since you got this recognition?
In all honestly, they didn't understand very well my poetry, so
Ladies and gentlemen, I have the great honor of bringing you one of the finest poets of Eastern Europe, translator, impresario, and talented writer and poet, Mr. Mircea Danduta. Mircea, welcome, my brother.
Thank you very much, Rick. Thank you for inviting me and for this very generous, almost cosmic presentation, which I'm not sure I deserve, but well, because it comes from your part, I can't refuse it, because from a great writer and producer like you, and today actually I found out you have a degree in computer engineering, and also you worked in medicine research. So from such a multilaterally talented person, one can't refuse something good they say about you. So thank you very much, Rick. I am honored myself being here. I'm honored myself having been doing this program almost 3 years long together with you, Poets of the East. And I am honored to say welcome to one of the very talented and ingenious and deeply original poetesses from Canada, Georgiana Mărculescu. I think it is one of the few poets in the world which write in 3 languages. I don't know whether she had the opportunity to tell you that she writes in English, in French, and in Romanian. So I'm happy to see both of you now, and I apologize for my silent twin, which you are seeing on the image. Actually, I don't know him at all. Since I was born, my mother told me, though I don't have any twins, today I see that the truth is a little bit different. I'm asking my mama about it, but after our recording session.
My friend, I started a little bit of an interview. Why don't you go ahead and conduct your interview of this charming young poet? Please, sir, the floor is yours. We'll give her the ceiling, but you can have the floor.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm honored. Welcome, Georgiana, once again, and I'm very happy to have made the opportunity of putting you two in contact, because good producers, because excellent cultural producers need good artists, and good artists need good producer. Georgiana, I'm happy you're here. We know about each other some things, so let's the audience find out also about you. I understood that Rick has already had some short conversation with you about how you start writing. You started writing, if I'm not wrong, and that's how actually comes in image one of the best, another of the best Romanian living writers, Dumitru Crudu, who actually was the one who initiated Georgiana into writing. Would you like to tell this story to the audience and to Rick as well, because it is a charming audience, just like Dudu is a great and a charming writer and person?
I don't. So it's not a very spectacular story, but it's definitely one of the interesting ones. He was in college back then. He was a student in philology, and one of our family friends and neighbors said that he could use a helping hand, and we hosted him for a little while, which gave me the opportunity to get to know him. Of course, at that age, I was like not even 14-year old, and very disorganized and very confused in my literature, in my writing. Back in the old Romanian schools, they were not necessarily creating writers. So the fact that going off the script was this big wow moment. And this is what Dumitru Crudu taught me, that poetry can be fun, poetry can be imaginative, poetry can be um, a whole bundle of feelings put together in a very artistic way. So I don't know if he did that on at once, but I do remember him cutting a lot of lines from what I wrote because they kind of didn't match the rest. And my heart was aching at that point. It's like, but no, that was a beautiful image. But in the end, he kind of explained me why he was cutting all the lines and just leaving the core of the text. And he was actually the one who taught me how to cut in poetry. And I think that's an amazing lesson, to be honest with you, to be able to give up on your babies. For a greater good. So yeah, that was a very important lesson. And every time he would come to our place, I would give him more more texts. And after he graduated from university, he left. He kept a relationship with my mom as well, and we were great fans of him and his writing. Not always we didn't always understood it back then because I was not even in college, but definitely made a huge change. Dumitru Crudu brought a huge change in my life at the writing level.
Let's hope he is now uh, following this transmission, and let's hope he and I think he has all the reasons to be proud of his that time student. And in connection with this, and because Rick is also a great pedagogue and a great maestro in explaining, in teaching poetry, with that difference that in Rick's case, this is natural, this is spontaneous. I would like to ask him, which is the lesson from his point of view, in which consists the lesson of cutting from a text. What would you say to a student, to a young student, to a young poet, um, in order to convince him or her to cut something from her or his text? What do you think?
Thank you. That's a very good question. My philosophy is listen attentively to the muse. Take it down, write it out, but then come back and think about what themes or theme you want to develop. Because, there's an old aphorism, a painter is never done with a painting, a poet's never done with a poem. You could literally work it and 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 polish it until you break it down to the very nub. But I am by and large a narrative poet. I try to tell a story. It's a rare poem that I allow frivolity and the wild metaphor to run rampant. So I always kind of focus in on what narrative am I trying to get across, and then prune everything that does not take you to that goal. I think that narrative poetry is far easier for most people to negotiate than what we might call free verse, or more like the jangling metaphors of some poets.
Thank you very much, Rick. It's actually a real lesson of poetry, which you concentrated in let me see, 2 minutes and 32 seconds. But I think this is those are 2 minutes and 32 seconds that every poet should listen to and apply to his or her creation. And because you actually initialized a touch with one of your favorite themes, one of your favorite questions. I would like to ask Georgiana, and I apologize to Rick for asking this favorite question of his. Georgiana, do you think that a poet should assume some responsibility for the world he or she is living in, or that he or she should be a poet for himself or for herself, or writing poetry just for the sake of poetry and without following any kind of dimensions of responsibilities about it? Ladies and gentlemen, this was a question raised by Rick Spisak with Mircea Danduța's mouth.
Well, as Mr. Spisak said, it's like there is no easy question here around here, right? I personally believe that no poetry should be written without responsibility. That said, responsibility is towards oneself to begin with, responsibility towards the produced art, and afterwards the responsibility towards the world, the readers. So I guess I think even this would be the order in which I would go to. It's like writing without responsibility creates just in my opinion just chaos. So, and it's good not taking responsibility. It's like leaving orphans everywhere. It doesn't help anybody, and get sloppy and so on and so forth.
Okay, if Rick agrees, I suggest that you would read one of your poems, because it is very important that audience makes acquaintance not only with your opinions and with your intellectual and artistic ideas, not only with your biographical details, but also and mainly, especially, with your poetry. So, Rick, do you allow me to kindly ask Georgiana to read a poem at her choice? But of course, written by her.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Please,
so the one I decided to start with is called In Praise of My Mother. And it was written after the text called In Praise of My Sister by, I think I'm not going to pronounce it right, by Wisława Szymborska.
Szymborska, great.
Okay,
wonderful. Yes, Wisława Szymborska.
Yes, so my mother doesn't write poems. She doesn't write prose either. She collects postcards, stacking them up in envelopes in all detergent paper boxes. Her mind is waving coffee shops, parks, and cathedrals. People are never tired. They move freely. She wears running shoes, just in case stairs take her to Quebec. My mother doesn't write poems. She doesn't write prose either. Scrubbed iron bedding. The door opens to loving food. People sit on comfortable chairs, the same way they would sit in front of a fire. She never keeps her hands in her lap. Never did her mother before. So
Wonderful, really, and impressive, and sensitive also. You know, Rick, actually, I'm discussing with you just like Georgiana wouldn't be able to hear me now. I I knew Georgiana's poetry, and I had I claimed I knew it quite well, but I didn't know this sensitive dimension of it. Um, I knew it as an intellectual poet. I knew it as a person which is cutting, is necessary cruelly into the world around her. But it is for the first time I am hearing such a sensitive poem written by her. What does your intuition say about Rick?
It's a lovely poem, and one hears an affection and almost an embrace of a person who has a different kind of life. And the world of poets is a world of ideas, is a world of the carefully constructed phrase. And I think her poem expresses an appreciation, a love of a person whose collection, if you will, is not words, is not ideas, is not songs, but it's those lovely postcards, and she stores them in a most prosaic way, and that very simplicity, I think, is even more endearing than if one had postcard books or scrapbooks or something like that. I think there's such a genuine love and affection there. Thank you. Lovely.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. It's a wonderful review of this poem.
Poets who indulge ourselves in our sensitivities, our poor brothers and sisters around the world who are so busy in their life that they don't take time to feel, to take time to really live our lives. Poets, I think we live in such a sweet world, so full of the beauties, the honey of life, and the sadness and tragedy of life. How many times do you hear a poem that's just thick with irony? And even in that irony, even in that almost bitterness, there's a love there. There's a cherishing there. Your poem about your mom. I know those people too. You know those people, Mersha. People who live, should we say, a less intellectual life, but they find the beauty in even a comedy show on television, or a favorite bag that they like to use, or their shoes that that's the shoes they wear when there's something special going on, and those little elements of life that we imbue with such magic. And thank God there's poets to mull on that and to share that beauty, because it's a special beauty.
Wonderful, very
Definitely.
sensitive, very sensitive, and in the same time a very complete and comment of Rick's, which actually embraces in such a sensitive way this poem, as sensitive the poem itself is. So what about asking another question to Georgiana from
I would love to. I'm going to ask this lovely woman, when you first came to this such a different world, you must have written some thought pieces as you transition from a Eurocentric to a Quebec-centric or a Montreal-centric. Are any of those poems available to you?
If you give me a moment, I
Can give
might.
you 2 moments, my dear. Absolutely. That's what the
Um,
editing floor is for.
True. Um, well, the other thing is that at one point, once I arrived in Montreal, I kind of stopped writing, being busy with life.
Right.
I came with two empty luggage, and I had nothing. So I had to get a life, get an identity, build an identity, and try to integrate. And so the writing came afterwards. And during the first period of Montreal and uh, coming back to Dumitru Crudu, he used to be anyway in and out from my life at very important moments. Not important history wise, but important for my own for my own upbringing, for my own development. And I was grateful and lucky enough so that every time he basically left the door open, and he tried to encourage me all the time. So after I came here. I moved to Quebec City. I went through different stages, and at one point I looked for him and I said, "Listen, is there any way so that you can take me and talk poetry with me again? Because I wanna keep my soul and I wanna save my soul at the same time. So it's like, please take me."
Sure. Sure.
So this is kind of what happened like 2 years ago, roughly 2, 3 years ago, and ever since it's like I basically started being recommitted to writing, and writing in this. So I used to consider it a gift and a curse at the same time, like everybody
Always.
else.
Always.
Always, we're all in the same boat with that one.
Absolutely.
Right now I see it more as a gift and as a responsibility, less than a curse. It's like I must, I'm taking responsibility for the curse part. you know
Okay. Why
uh,
don't you go ahead and read us the next one you would like to share?
I want to I have, unfortunately, these ones initially they were written in Romanian, so I had to
That's okay.
translate them. Um, and it was quite an interesting imagery. You are gonna see one of the first texts that I sent to Dumitru Crudu was "Thinking of Amy," and you are gonna recognize this Amy. Um Poems, a lot of poems replacing satious, satiety, thirst, sex. I'm closing my eyes thinking of her night makeup. In school, I could never get it quite like hers. And I was misleading. I was misleading without remorse. Poets were my favorite lovers. Together we were writing day lines. Together we were writing the nights naked. Together we were harvesting mornings in breath and flashes. Oh, Amy, but they were keeping me young. Mom bought me a guitar at the age of 10. I stopped playing though. I took the guitar and turned it into a tattoo under my arm, discreetly, and not really, like the beginning of a novel. It is still haunting me even now, how I was combining, how I was stepping boldly while words were turning into opinions and sensations, in stamina and freedom. Oh, Amy, your CD is almost over, but I'm still stubbornly growing my hair. I've dropped the makeup to safely mislead, Today you crept in me, and I can only vibrate with blisters on my fingertips.
Lovely. Lovely.
Thank you.
Please read another.
The same period, or
My dear, the floor is yours. Go anywhere you want to go.
I
How's that?
I'm gonna let Mircea decide which one, newer or older.
Okay, in this case, I order you to read the next one.
You are no fun, Mircea.
You know, Rick, I think when I first meet Georgiana in person, I think I'm going to take 2 slaps.
Okay. I'm gonna yeah, that's all right. I guess I'm gonna do both, a little bit of
Go
every.
ahead.
This time we're gonna change the register a little bit. We're going towards mythology. There is this book called the Women Who Run with the Wolves. It's an author that praises women and femininity at a higher level, where women are more than men and more than objects. Let's put it like this, in a very synthesized description that I can offer here. So they basically, she's talking about La Loba. La Loba is this wolf that um, can breathe on bones and can make bones be creative. The bones are gonna become like a phoenix bird. They're gonna rebuild themselves. So La Loba brings life in the end.
Okay.
And here it is. La Loba of the city. La Loba rose from a giant of clay, forgotten on the concrete. A feral woman walks on patches of lawns, wolf musk hair under tiger skin, by herself in the city, humming, calling at the root of an electric pole. Her strong nails rip the wrapping paper of her hours, until she reaches the flesh that danced next to the fire. The other La Loba is still gathering bones, breathes and sings. She's leaning over the ground. La Loba of the city eats grains of salt, hoping one day to toss the four. So that's La Loba.
This is the kind of poems I was used to from Georgiana's part, those very intellectual ones, you know, Rick, that's what I was talking about. Actually, she's revealing us another facet of her work now. So let's listen to the next one, please.
Please.
The next one is a poem about nothing.
Wonderful.
Great.
We're all obsessed with nothing, right? Morning light throws us against the wall. A gulp of warm coffee meets the gastric acid. Big and small intestines leave little place for babies. The smell of his hair ebb and flow on my face. Lunch noises, assaults on the kitchen counter, boomerangs, chronic laughter. Sentences fall like birds. Nobody's picking them up. The first floor is completely empty.
Oh my God, this really, this made me feel my skin like, you know, it's that expression in Romanian. It's like hand skin.
Goosebumps?
Goosebumps. That's right. Yes, and I remember it. I think you read it once during one of the meetings organized by Dudu, because I think, I'm not sure if you mentioned, I think you didn't, that you are also a member of this literary club he's coordinating, called Literary Club Vlad Ionita, after the name of a great Moldavian writer. And she's one of the most active presences, Rick, within this literary club. Actually, half of the members are present live in person in Chisinau, in Moldavia, and the other half, they are coming from different parts of the world, of course, online. As you can see, from Canada, from Belgium, from Portugal, from Holland, from Romania. So it's that I heard this poem for the second time in my life, and it was one of the only ones. Dudu had no reproaches to it. He just said, "No."
He didn't cut anything.
No, he said, "This is a perfect poem. Let it remain the way it is." And believe me, Rick, this is a very high praise from the part of Dudu, who, even if he is a very kind person, he is very critic and objectively critic with his colleagues in the literary club.
That's right.
Bravo. Beautiful
Thank
piece. Please read another.
Well, I have a question for you first. It's like,
Please.
while all the pressure on me is like,
Well, if you'd like
and
us to read one, we should. Absolutely.
yes, before that, if you have a poem on this, that's fine. Well, I'm more than happy to listen to it, but the question is like, do you have faith? Do you two have faith as poets?
Well, I'll tell you this. I was raised in the Catholic religion. I had my concerns, let's say, about it. And these led me to challenge the Catholic Church, and my reward when I was ordered out. And the good part of that was it led me to study all religions. I've read very widely: the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran, the Upanishads, the Talmud, the Quran, many, many, many books. But to answer specifically about poetry, I will say this. I believe that inspiration, or our muse, if you will, can lead us to some marvelous, intoxicating places. And as a craftsman, as a writer who tries to polish his craft, I write every day, not always filled with inspiration, but I write every day so that when inspiration comes, I can do it justice. So I think that's probably an answer.
Okay. Do you have a poem about this?
Well, I have a poem about nothing.
I'm more than happy to hear that.
Okay, there is a state of mind described in Hindu literature where the monkey mind, that normal chattering mind, is set aside. Okay.
Okay.
And I thought about it and meditated on it, and finally I decided I would do it. So here it is. This is called Shunya, or nothingness. When we follow an adept, there's every chance our feet get wet. We drop our burdens on the way. We never stop to kneel or pray. We've dropped our burdens as we stray. No climbing to the peaks to see, no silent song of never be. In quietude we spend our day. We do not chatter, never play. In quiet, humbly, meekly walk. We never whine, we never balk. Carry what burdens e'er we must, while dropping greed and pride and lust. The vast expanse of space and time, we even leave silence far behind. When men invented zero to measure, more than joy and less than treasure, even science says most of space is empty now, as our molecules just as empty. Wow. If every human could be compressed so that all the emptiness was removed, they would all require so little space they could all be placed inside a room. If matter was reduced to protons, electrons, and the rest, head rattle around in a birdie's nest. There's a lot of empty space, it seems, as much in atoms, molecules, and dreams. But shunya is a special knowledge. You may not learn it in school or college. All that emptiness, it seems, is far more present. Once it seemed unpleasant. The physicists insist on this, the yogi and the guru too. Although it might look like bliss, it's all just nothing, and that's very true. Between the atoms in a molecule, there's an awful lot of space. Between the guru and the chela, a golden stretch of grace. Nothingness abounds, it's true. It's all an illusion, just like you. And though it seems we are here, the truth, it seems, is far from clear. In the physics and the chemist lab, they tied a molecule to a slab. And it seems in science it's also true. There's really not so much of me or you. And though some might scoff in dumb derision at the acute rudeness of the vision, it neither requires abstract calculation or long division. In the grace vast reaches of time and space, the table's set, so let's say grace. The planet and the nebulae, upon this we can surely rely, and inner space our sanctum sure, yet no statue to adore. The silence of the mountaintop can bring the noisy mind to stop, and as the chatter dies away, the sun inside renews the day. The whole of consciousness is revealed in the silent spinning of the wheel. The mantra works to quiet thought, to remind us of the vision lost. The noisy mind has redefined what the self is, so we find. In contemplation's garden gold, there's as much fruit as some have been told. But still, if cluttered is your mind, all the lost treasures, those you'll never find. Whether guru or chela or chemist in lab, whatever you reduce perception to a single point, you'll have dropped at the door with so much more. Shunya.
Wow, wonderful, a wonderful poem, Rick.
Thank you.
You
I
know,
wouldn't.
yes, please.
Please, Mircea.
Please, I interrupted you. Please.
I said it's like I wouldn't have expected anything less or anything shorter from you, and you took the long hard way to explain nothingness, and you did it extremely well.
Thank you.
Thank you for.
It's a lot of words to describe nothing, huh?
Actually, you know, it is if nothingness. It's the complementary part of the infinity. The rest of the infinity, it's quite infinity. And in this case, describing nothingness, it's not describing infinity. Rick described infinity, and that means what rested, what's left, it's nothingness, it's shunya. Actually, it is a little bit, we discussed about it. Actually, it is a little bit like that limit theory in mathematics, going through towards zero, but never reach it, never put the hands on it. That's the shunya, and this explanation with the help of infinity, going into the philosophy of science, it's really impressive. You know, it may sound just quite weird, but even if Rick and I took part together in that festival he mentioned, it is for the first time when I hear himself reading this poem. I mean, I read it myself, but it is completely different when the author himself is reading his own poem and gives the necessary intonation to elements he feels he has to. Thank you very much, Rick.
Yeah.
Let me welcome our next guest. Lennart, welcome.
Greetings.
Let me introduce you to Mircea Danduda, who I think you may have met, but also
yes.
our other poet guest, Georgiana Mărculescu. And Georgiana's got one more poem for us to finish up her part of the interview. So if you'll relax and enjoy what I guarantee you will be an amazing poem. Georgiana, what would you like to leave us with, dear?
Oh my God, no pressure here.
No, not at all. Nobody here but poets. Georgiana, any poem you would like to read, my dear, please, I can guarantee you an enthusiastic audience.
Mircea might be familiar with it. Late Lunch Phantom.
Oh, great. A wonderful poem. Yes. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes. Yes, great.
you are familiar with this one. It's hard to choose with you guys. I haven't seen white skin trees in Arizona. I haven't seen raindrops. I have seen raindrops once. Rectangular parking lots are for tacos. Roofs are not pointed, and nor should they be. I've seen raindrops once. Big and small trucks burn tires to red. Roofs are not pointed, nor should they be. Homeless men and women in the rain. Big and small trucks burn tires to red. Downtown is empty. Unplayed stadium. Homeless men and women in the rain. Who turned off daylight on the side of the road? Downtown is empty. Unplayed stadium. Arcades of white sand and graffiti. Who turned off daylight on the side of the road? My cousin doesn't walk with no reason. We stopped the car in this rectangular parking. We were alone, or almost. Traveler, woman behind the shop veil. My cousin doesn't walk with no good reason. Seriously? I pushed the kid back in the car. The white cab slowed down in between the two parking spaces, driverless. Maybe it saw a gun. Seriously? I pushed the kid back in the car. The woman behind the shop veil sweeps away bullets. Drive, drive, driveless. I apologize. Driverless, maybe it saw a gun reflected in the traveler's back sunglasses. The woman behind the shop veil sweeps away bullets. I haven't seen any white skin trees in Arizona.
Lovely. Lovely.
Thank you.
Was there a particular inspiration for that piece, or was it just amusing?
I was in Arizona. My partner is from Arizona. He's from Phoenix, Arizona. So we're visiting his family, and it's a completely exotic place from somebody from Europe. And we ended up in a side of the city that we were looking for tacos of all things, and we ended up in a very sketchy side of Phoenix, and
Right.
that kind of inspired the poem.
Thank you so very much. A great pleasure hearing you, meeting you, and hearing some of your work.
Likewise.
Just marvelous stuff. Mersha, would you like to make a few comments, brother, wrapping up?
The silenced microphone was the curse of one of my curses one of my curses upon myself for today. But at least now it works. I mean the microphone, not the curse. I'm very happy Georgiana was here today. I'm very happy that our audience had the opportunity to make acquaintance with her creation, with her work, with her poetry. And personally, I am happy, and I consider as an excellent plus for myself that I met also, that I made acquaintance with the sensitive dimension of her poetry, because as I mentioned, I knew her only as a philosopher, and even as a sarcastic one, as an intellectual one. But this dimension is also, in the sensitive dimension, is also impressive in her work. Thank you very much, Rick, for inviting her, and I'm sure our audience will appreciate her creation. Good luck to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you to both of you, and thank you for the invitation. It was a very warming welcome and warming discussions, and I'm looking forward to listen to you, to listening to you, and to talk to you in the
We'd
near
be happy to
future.
have you back again sometime, okay? And
Okay,
now
thank
you're
you.
welcome to stay for a little bit if time allows, but if you need to leave to attend to the young one, that's perfectly fine too, okay?
I'll listen to the second part, unfortunately.
That's
But
perfectly fine.
thank you one more time.
Okay, you're very welcome, dear. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Okay, thanks. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is my profound pleasure to bring you another very, very talented author and poet, a man of peace, a man of high international literature. Lennart Lundh, welcome, sir. Welcome to Poets of the East. I do want to make one explanation. Even though geographically you seem to be west of us, I believe that every poet is a sun unto themselves, and whenever a sun rises, that's the East. So welcome, oh you Eastern poet, Lennart, Poet of the East, welcomes.
Thank you. Thank you, my brother.
And as we say, you know Mersha, another tremendous poet of the East,
Yeah.
a man of great talent, translator, impresario, poet, author, cinist, just another tremendous person. So I'm so glad we can all come together. And Lennart, let me give Mersha a few words at the top too. Go ahead, Mersha.
Thank you very much, Rick. Thank you for this invitation and wonderful welcoming. I feel really honored and privileged to have the opportunity of welcoming Mr. Lennart Lundh. You are very right. He belongs to the best what the contemporary poetry has today in the world, and he is as famous in the West as in the East, in the North as in the South, and just like his poetry. I have to add also that I am impressed, especially of his profound metaphors, but also by his romanticism and by his ability of combining those two elements of poetry. Not only those two elements, but especially those two elements, which in case of other authors could be considered as contrasting, but in his case are just synthesizing. So in short, it is a great honor for Poets of the East to welcome Lennart Lundh. Welcome here, Mr. Lundh.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Lennart, I always like to start my interviews by learning a little bit about something about young Lennart. Some of us, came up holding crayons and were immediately writers and artists, and some of us came to it later. Tell us about young Lennart. Were you one of those people that just couldn't stop scribbling, or did it come later for you?
No, it came early. It came early. I made the association in the Sunday funnies between the actions that were laid out and the conversations in the bubbles. And I realized that words were descriptors. So I was a storyteller when I was 3-4 years old. Edited a school newspaper in grammar school. Didn't start writing seriously and trying to find a voice of my own until I was sophomore in high school. Before that, I did a lot of things that were, like I'm sure everybody does at some point, weak imitations of things that I had read, recasting the characters and things like that. But yeah, I started early, and I hit my stride when I was 15.
Well, those years of the late 60s, 70s, those were full of foment. Lots of important issues being worked out, if you will, more or less, in that first draft form for so many of us. And many of us poets and artists were called out to comment, to treat on it. Did you find yourself one of those people speaking out in those days?
Uh,
High school and college years?
High school years, no. Even by the time I was a senior in high school, I was advised by my mentor there that I should stop trying to imitate Dylan and Whitman and find my own voice. College more so, yeah. Some of my earliest pieces were anti-war pieces. And I spoke out much more after I returned from Vietnam.
Yeah, those were interesting days. The literature at the time, the comic books, the cartoons, the free letters, the free newspapers, a very dramatic time. Now, you mentioned Nam. Did you write over there, or was it enough to live a life over there?
I wrote while I was there. Yeah. I wrote daily. And
Do you still have some
a lot
journals?
of that. Actually, there's a box full of them downstairs in the basement. Yeah. A lot of the writing was also letters home to my wife and describing what was going on, my impressions of what I saw. I was not a direct combatant, although I served in the combat zone. I was aboard a helicopter carrier. We supported 1,200 Marine troops and a squadron of helicopters. And among other things, I was one of the people who carried the stretchers across the flight deck down to the surgical suites and down to the morgue. So interesting times. Yeah.
I won't dwell on those, but you returned. Did you do college after you returned or before you went?
I dropped out of my first college after a semester out of high school. I just wasn't ready to discipline myself for college. I wrote a paper on the Vietnam War, a monograph, while I was there.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of reading that had absolutely nothing to do with coursework. And after the first semester, they said, "Why don't you stay home?" I had the honor of being kicked out of the same college as Judy Collins, by the way.
Nice. Congratulations.
So, yeah. I went back to school in '74 after our third daughter was born.
Wow.
And I was, let's see, I was 36 when I got my master's.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. What'd you get your master's in, if you don't mind me asking?
Interdisciplinary social sciences, history, political science, sociology.
Wow.
Northeastern Illinois University was a very radical school at the time, with a very large.
You said interdisciplinary. That alone was should we say, fighting words in some quarters. Yeah.
Oh yeah. But for Northeastern, that was exactly what they wanted. They were in the middle of a Latino, Korean, and other immigrant communities. It was a commuter college. So the university itself was physically a melting pot, and academically, they expected you to know a lot of stuff.
Oh, that's great. Did you end up teaching at the end of that?
No, I was working in information technology, and I was making too much money with 3 kids and a wife to be able to teach.
I completely understand, my friend.
Yeah.
Completely understand.
I did use the degree, the history part of the degree, at least to some extent, by books of military aviation history. But beyond that, no, never taught. Never taught.
So you came back, you finished your education. The writing opportunities, what writing opportunities did you seek?
I was strictly submitting to journals, magazines, and so on. As we both realized, this was pre-internet. So you'd have to go to the library or the bookstore and pick up a copy of the Writer's Guide to Submissions and go through there and snail mail everything. I was not doing book length work. I was just doing simple submissions, and got in a few anthologies, got in a couple dozen of journals. It was a much longer, slower process than it is now. I made a submission yesterday to a journal in India, and I got the acceptance this morning when I woke up.
Excellent. Excellent.
That is so much different than putting a self-addressed stamped envelope inside the other envelope and hoping to hear something back eventually.
I had a very interesting story told to me by a civil engineer when I was doing animation to support architects and engineers. He said, "Richard, I don't understand where we're going." This happened to be the early 90s. He said, when I was a young engineer, my experience was you'd call a meeting with your client. You'd talk for a while. After you talked for a while, you'd go back to your office, and the next week or two, you'd write up some assessments. You'd send that back in snail mail. Then you'd have another meeting, and then you'd talk again, and then you'd come towards some decisions. He said, literally, from a phone call this morning, I've got a meeting this afternoon. They want to plan the building entirely tonight, and by the end of the night, they want it designed. And I said, that sounds like a situation fraught with potential for problems. And he goes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my sons-in-law is an architect. So yeah. The times have changed. Times have really changed. And for me, it was an interesting process because I was in IT, I was the mainframe generation, the big room-filling computers that you used to see in the movies. And so I had to go through a second education.
Right. Well, I came late to computing, relatively speaking, but my love was light shows. I did light shows, laser shows, planetarium shows. So I took electronics courses to facilitate that electronics kind of presentation. In the process, I got a broadcast engineering license and then took some digital courses. So I was sitting in an architectural firm who has they were entirely mainframe. Yeah. And the last thing they wanted to hear was that I could do the same thing on a $4,000 box that they were doing in a room full of computers.
Yeah.
And so I literally was sitting with the engineers at a presentation where the CAD product used by NASA, used by the CIA, was now being downsized to a laptop. And these guys, as you well know, they were not happy campers. At least a couple of them made some money at year 2000 with that whole interesting debacle.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So you start writing. I would say you probably found a time when it was time to write popular, to write poetry, to write accessible, to do performance poetry. When did that happen for you, sir?
I've never really done what I consider performance poetry. Reading at open mics, reading as a feature, reading in public. That came about First time I read poetry in public would have been in 2011.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
I live in the southwest suburbs of Chicago, and this is a black hole for the arts in general. Okay. If there are any other poets in my village of 7,000 people, I have no knowledge of them. If there are any poets within a 5-mile radius, I have no knowledge of any of them. It wasn't until I was doing textbook acquisitions for Lewis University near here, and the English department was having an open mic, and I said, "Hey, do you mind if a non-student drops in?" And they said, no problem at all. And they introduced me to people who introduced me to people who introduced me to other people. And that's when the networking began, and when the 5-6 readings a month live started. Now it's more like 5 or 6 readings every week. And I miss a lot because they conflict.
Sure.
I had no exposure to the Chicago creative community until that time. I had no idea who anybody was. And fortunately, I fell in with people who welcomed me with open arms. Unlike some areas that I've been told about over the years, the Chicago community has always been 99% free of animosity towards each other.
Not always
lots
common.
and lots of cooperation.
Good to hear. Good to
The way
hear.
it should be.
Yeah. Well, I was introduced to public performance art in the anti-war days, 68, 69. And I, as an enthusiastic one-worlder anti-war person myself, I embraced that part of things. I came up from a politically active city of Pittsburgh where labor unrest had resulted in some pretty ugly stuff. So I had a bit of a social motive consciousness. But the funniest thing happened in the, I guess it was the late 70s. They began a series of poetry contests. Now, to me, poetry and contests are not two concepts that go together. If you want to read. And for those who love to criticize, go freaking criticize somewhere. But comparing poet to poet, I think, is like comparing fingers. Yeah, you could do it, but what's the point? Anyway, I ended up winning 4 months in a row, and I felt it was so embarrassing because I thought this was nonsense, But what came from it for me was a gentleman came out to me and said, "Richard, I produce shows at the local public radio station. Would you be interested in a radio show?" And I said, yeah, definitely. And he said, "So what would you do?" And you know how sometimes your mouth does something and you wonder who said that? Before I could think about it, my mouth said, "Well, I want to do a science fiction comedy show called Martian Ambassador and the Captured Chorus." And he was shocked because he figured, this is going to be a poetry show and they'll have so I did a radio show for a year, Friday night drive time, a live sci-fi comedy show. It was my introduction to radio. Anyway, so you've been writing for years now. You wrote commercially. You wrote, should we say, industrial work? Treating on aircraft and flights and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've been writing and reading poetry for years. Did there come a point in your life when you said to yourself, "My God, I'm a poet," or did it just come as a totally natural evolution?
It just seemed to come naturally. I became a poet because of Carl Sandburg. I was a sophomore in high school. I was number 1 in the class of 420 some, and they realized that I had no place being in the study hall for an hour a day. So they gave me a pass to the library that was good for the entire year.
Wow.
And one day when I went up there, there was a brand new, just out of the box, still in the wrapper, copy of Sandburg's Honey and Salt.
Wow.
And I read that. And in comparison to the Shakespeare and the Wordsworth and so on that we were taught in 8th grade and as freshmen in high school, that was a whole different world. It just spoke to me, and the lack of the structure without structure. You know, Sandburg poems are very identifiable most of the time. He has his own voice, which is another reason not to compete or compare with other poets, because the good ones have their own voices and you couldn't do what they're doing and they can't do what I do. But yeah, that's really what set me off as a poet, was that freedom that was there.
Is there a line or two of Sandburg that you think of often?
Yeah. Probably the only Sandburg poem that I have memorized. It's a very short one. Why did he say I can't live without you? And why did she say I can't live with you? When he went east and she went west, and they both lived. Very odd little poem, but yeah.
Nice.
What Sandburg gave me was the permission to use the right word in the right place, rather than the right meter or the right rhyme pattern or whatever. Entirely opened up the concept of expressive writing, as did the beats. My next introduction was Ferlinghetti, a far cry from Sandburg in many ways, but also brothers. Larry Levis, all the poets who just happened to be coming into print in the mid to late 60s. Yeah.
Good stuff. So,
Yeah.
Sir, we've learned a little bit about this young man. I think it's time we start to hear some of his verses. Sir,
Okay.
you can take us wherever you want to take us, sir. Floor, the ceiling, the walls, they're all yours.
Okay. Word of caution, I have a reputation in the Chicago community and elsewhere nowadays with Zoom of having two overarching themes: love songs and war poems, and other miscellaneous things. But the reputation is mostly for not telling anybody which one is which. Let the audience try to decide, because sometimes love is a battlefield, and sometimes war does surprising things. So, yeah.
I know I've heard the phrase battle of the sexes. I can't say I haven't missed it.
Oh, the battles are different when it's couples. Certainly not playing tennis, Okay. The boy with a clock on his back can't hear the ticking, but feels the motion of the hand's movement as he walks down the alley. Walks on mud-covered cobbles, but doesn't leave footprints. Nothing to say he's been here until he steps into the puddle, the one that's been waiting for him, where he leaves short-lived ripples and waves on the water, making the sky and walls reflected on the surface shimmer as though they were on fire for one brief moment. But he doesn't notice this, or that his shoes are now wet. He only sees the line where alley and plaza meet, the door goal on the other side, where he prays silently to do this one thing right today, to be safe from the burning scorn and ridicule that drip from his mother's mouth like a rabid dog's foam-flecked blind anger, to be a good and acceptable son, to be on time. Let's see, find the right page here.
Powerful, sir. Powerful.
Thank you. Thank you. I hear the river singing when I think of you. That early fall in Paris, the water lapping at the broad steps on the left bank, gaining and losing intensity as the boats passed, is part of our story. We felt hidden in the vague shadows, part of love's misleading blindness. I know we were lost in our kisses, deep in each other's nearness, not oblivious to the world, but taking it as background noise. Closing my eyes reveals you in belted black slacks, a white blouse open deep at the neck, a thin plaid car coat. The thing is, we were never in Paris. We never got as far as fall. Only one of us might have been in love. If it never happened, is a memory a lie? After following you home, the twin black cats shared the sill of the open bedroom window, observing the rising full moon as if ready to report to you, as if they were self-appointed familiars to your spells. The board you placed on the rug between us began to select letters before a question was chosen. Leave him, it spelled without hesitation. And you replied in kind, throwing it in the fire that warmed the room, growling, "Screw that," as you led me to the waiting goose down mattress and pillows. At some point before morning, the candles on your dressing table fluttered and guttered in a sudden breeze. And you left me long enough to shoo the cats and close the windows.
Bravo, sir. Bravo.
Thank you. Thank you. Asian still lifes, 1 through 4. 1. Flying the first wave in at dawn, we crossed the tree line and began to take fire. And I, standing at the machine gun, closed my eyes and swung the barrel, praying blindly for some resolution. 2. At Fubai to pick up ammunition, I'm wrapped in cartridges and flak vest, riding in a Jeep with some lieutenant who'll be here driving generals when I'm in Hong Kong getting drunk. 3. Some Marine bled to death on the flight deck today. They flew 6 casualties in at one time, and all they could see to do was have the chaplain give last rites. 4. I was going to write before and tell you all about the color of the sea here, but we took fire from the beach, so there really wasn't time. The sun is setting now. It's the color of the sea. Oldest grandson did a tour in Afghanistan. He was military police with the Marines, and he drove the lead truck in convoys, the one with the mine rollers on it.
Wow.
In his 7-month deployment, he got blown up 4 times. And he also held the record for his unit for all of their deployments up to that point for the number of IEDs that he drove over that didn't explode.
Did he do okay in terms of
Physically, yeah. Psychologically, we'll get to that.
Sure, sure.
IED QED. Depleted uranium is still on the periodic table.
Good God.
Wait, it waits there for you. Or you can search if you feel prompted. Tip of your fingers will seem a sudden silence as the sun sets. The depth stairway issues from the boombox. Above and behind you at the 50, the freaking you guy screams along off key. You holler something to him and miss the signal from the sensor. The shell was stolen from a stockpile. It took 4 men to hide it in your path. Even as I run from my truck to yours, I know there's no reason to hurry. Heavy metal thunder echoes from the hills. They're screaming, but no climbing guitar notes to match. Your dog tags, wrapped like mourning bands for silence, weigh more than words upon my palm. Mother and child. When you were one, we spent the day at Disneyland. Your mother, my uncle, and I took turns watching you in your stroller from ride to ride. That night in your crib, you gazed wide-eyed for an hour, digesting, I guess, what you'd seen, and then smiled sweetly in your sleep. You won't remember, but we speak of it still. It's early in the 5th decade since that day. Your son is back from his war, just as I was from mine. His gaze across the dinner table is hooded, distant. I hope when he's a father, he'll dream of wondrous times. And fear when he's a grandfather, he'll scratch at hidden scars and remember his bodies at the end of the day. Matt is 36 now, and he cannot sit with his back to a door.
Sure.
When he's on an airplane, he takes the last seat in the back of the airplane.
Sure.
He has PTSD. He has conquered most of his anger issues.
Good.
Part of the cure for that was that he punched a tank one day and broke 5 fingers, just because he was angry.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So yeah, he came back, but he didn't come back.
I understand.
You know, parts of me are still there. Parts of him are still there. That dead kid on the flight deck was real, and I don't have near as many dreams of him as I used to, but every once in a while he comes back to remind me that he happened.
You know, the damage done to the innocents on all sides is monumental. And I don't think anyone is unscarred. And it's a burden that any society that goes to war has to respect and doesn't too often.
Yeah.
I was in a grocery store and they asked me, would you like to donate some change to veterans who've been hurt? And I said, I got to understand exactly how it is. The generals get golf courses and soldiers are begging for health care. I don't understand that.
It makes no sense at all.
Well,
none whatsoever.
And I know exactly how that crap happens.
Oh yeah.
And it's ugly. It's really, really ugly.
Yeah. I have had too many friends in the last few years whose younger brothers or sons have taken themselves out of this world.
Yeah.
Intentionally because of what they did and what they saw. Yeah.
I had a young man that I knew early in the Vietnam War, 62 or 63, come home with human body parts for souvenirs.
Mm-hmm. Hard to believe, right? But yeah.
And we pretend sometimes that we're a civilized culture. It's kind of spotty.
We kind of push the definition. Yeah. You want to hear some more poetry, or
please, sir, please. Your work is so powerful, brother. So powerful.
It's meant to be the opening salvo of a conversation with whoever is reading or listening.
Yeah.
And I will most of the time never hear from the person I'm starting the conversation with.
Well,
but
most people don't want to deal with truth.
No. It's because in terms of readers, I'm dealing with people in other countries. I am dealing with people who aren't even born yet. There's a box on the bookcase up here over my left shoulder of copies of all of my books for my great-granddaughter, who is turning 11 in November. When she hits 16, that's my legacy to her. Yeah. But it's still going to be a conversation. If I'm around, I may hear something from her. If I'm not around, I definitely won't. You know, but that's what I view the poetry as being, is a start to some thought processes between people. It would be nice if it led to good things. Yeah.
PTSD is not just for soldiers.
Oh no.
I've
No.
seen police officers
Yes.
who have it to the same.
Firefighters.
Yeah.
Yes. Paramedics. Yes. Yes, definitely.
My father
Changes.
tried
Go
to
ahead.
join World War II, but he was too young. His mother grabbed him. He was 14, grabbed him, pulled him off a train. And then when he did finally get a chance to join, he, to his incredible chagrin, because he really wanted to go kill people, he thought, he was made he had been an almost Olympic swimmer, so he was made lifeguard at an officers club in Key West, which annoyed him to no end because he didn't get a chance to be the hero he wanted to be. But then a helicopter crashed with sailors' families, and he was sent as part of the detail to go collect the wreckage, and that cured him. That cured him.
Oh, it will. Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Unless you're a real adrenaline junkie, that'll cure you. I have a friend who is indeed a adrenaline junkie. He did 5 tours in as a helicopter gunner and as a ranger on the ground, and then joined the fire department. And since being retired for medical reasons, because he swallowed too much smoke too many times, as a civilian, he's run into 3 burning apartment buildings because he didn't want to wait for the fire department to show up. That's an adrenaline junkie.
Yeah.
He's a really good man as well. I'm not denigrating him, but yeah, that kind of person deals with helicopter crashes and walks away fine.
Yeah.
Most of us, no, there's no way in hell. Change of
Please
pace.
continue, sir. You have powerful work.
You with your hair, color of a fox in winter, the darkened woods outside your door alive with owls and ravens. You make the townsfolk nervous when you come to market, talking to the cat perched on your shoulder as you shop for herbs and roots they think will turn their sons to frogs and their husbands to rodents. Leaving me to be your one enchanted love. Their caution is my gain. There was a woman who asked him to tell her stories before the candles snuffing. To read old poems or sing new songs meant only for her ears. He plumbed his genes for ancestral mountains and forgotten seas, his memories for the plains that spread from one to the other. Later, in the glow of their hearts in the dark of the night, she slept smiling in his arms as he kissed her 3 times on her forehead. Some mornings she embellished his words with responses pictured in their wake. Now he rises from dreams of them to feel her phantom weight on their bed, hear her whisper in her sleep, and wonders what ghosts dream of. Her hands delight in damselflies and dragons, the barest breeze of tiny wings, tickles of smaller feet across her palms. In return for such joys delivered by the universe, she chases rainbows on each thing her fingers touch. Her lover's eyes, bare slits before her laughter, will testify to this forever, as she of his ability to summon transmutation. Time for a quick sip here.
Please. Wonderful work, brother. Wonderful work.
The old man's voice is sinking in. that gravel that comes to us.
That
Oh,
sprinkled with the sage of wisdom, brother.
yes, in this case with green tea.
Bravo,
I've been on the wagon for 29 years. And one of the jokes I tell about that is that I gave up smoking marijuana as a young man because it interfered with my drinking. And then I had to give up drinking. You know, Dane and Mike Sindler and I were joking about that Tuesday night at Dane's venue. Alice B. Toklas brownies were mentioned, and we all said, we don't do that stuff anymore. Everything we do is legal and prescribed. You know, jazz me. Start me deep with jungle rhythms, add sugar cane and soils containing languages we'll learn to soon discard. Give me baptism by fires in the darkest of the night. And then escape with me while our others wallow, while our others follow missionary tracts and black motes noted on white sheets. We will fix on fusion. We will find the star stuff in each free improvisation. I will riff your body with my fingers, bring forth emanations with my lips, while you pluck counter notes and melodies to see us off the stage beyond percussive endings. Deep in God.
Bravo, sir. Bravo.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
One of the questions I like to ask poets, you know, some poets treat on important social actions, social movements. Some eschew that and write only of matters of the heart or imagination. I'm curious, do you believe that a poet has a responsibility to speak? Or should they just follow where their muse leads?
I believe that a poet, any creative, has a responsibility as a human being to speak. Whether they do it with their art or not, whether they do it exclusively or partially with their art or not, that I leave to the individual. I do both. I seldom comment on current events. Okay. I tend more to cast things in an anonymous space and time as much as possible, because I want my writing to have currency when that granddaughter turns 16 and knows nothing at all about Tenement Square, or very little about Donald Trump or whatever. Okay. I want the lesson that I'm hoping to share, the experience I'm hoping to share, the conversation I'm hoping to start, to be timeless. So yes, I have written poems about some of the mass shootings. It's hard not to, but overall, both my love songs and my war poems are non-generational and generally non-biographical, or autobiographical rather. You know, I'm as prone to write poems over words that I hear in a cafe or something as I am to write from my own experiences. In fact, having been writing since 1963 and being in print since 1965, I'm very reliant on ekphrastic poetry nowadays to come up with new approaches to things. Otherwise, it's going to become real redundant real fast, because I'm 75, I'm retired, I live in a white suburb of Chicago, I can't imagine what people like our friend Dee lived through. Yes, I can imagine, but no, I can't do more than do that. I don't get stopped for driving while white, you know? So my life is very boring nowadays. Really boring, and I like that. So, but what do you, go ahead.
No, please.
But what do you do with the ghosts you can't speak of? The ones that should be dust by now, but aren't. Haunting your sleep with kisses and caresses that would scatter your life like summer sand or autumn leaves on the winds if you replied. Do you ignore them? Deny them? Leaving you to writhe as dawn turns today? There is no easy answer to the questions, to the sadness, the ache. And when you find words, the moment is history, legend. Like saying, I love you, I'm sorry, I want you. And then the words are lost just in time for your heart to say it's breaking again. To ask how there could be rain everywhere, but not hair in the desert.
Beautiful.
Thank you. These couple poems are coming out of something that I'm very proud of, which is 10 years of doing a 30-30 National Poetry Month to raise funds for St. Baldrick's Foundation, Childhood Cancer Research. The people who get the books, who get the poems every day, have made a donation to St. Baldrick's. And I'm repaying them for their kindness. So of all the stuff that I've done, that's probably the body of work that I'm proudest of. Numbers are markers. What shall we count today? Almost 61 years behind us, you and your folks driving around, looking at the new neighborhood. One house stood out and you said, I'm marrying the boy who lives there. Also, almost that long ago, we shared a geography class. You saw my family's movies, The Summer in Norway and Sweden. You knew more about me than I would about you for a while. Coming up on 58 years, we shared a class, Max's. And you started showing up with our mutual friend Linda at church group parties. Our first dates, first kisses, love yous, and we were comfortable together. And 55 years today, that rainy morning in Burbank, the promises we still keep, the things we continue to learn about each other, about ourselves. So how about this? I vote we count ourselves blessed. The Snowbringer.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. The cat lies on the window seat, the clear, radiant sun heating everything. The room, the cushion, the sleeping birder and mouser. On the other side of the window, life is still blanketed by snow fallen yesterday. The ground, the picnic table, the leafless limbs the birds rest upon. Perhaps there is a nexus between leisure and struggle, joy and pain, as if life is a Venn diagram. My yin swallows a corner of your yang, changes it. If the sleeping cat brings storms, do the storms create its comfort? If so, what do we call the junction of having and needing love? This one is after a 1957 photograph of a cellist by Robert Guasneau, the French street photographer. Said cellist being sitting on a mountain playing the cello. One day, soon perhaps, or later, I will sit at the edge of the mountain and make music and write a song and paint the rising crag and gather words into a poem. You will be with me, and you will wonder at their order. You will climb despite your fears. You will sing a delicate echo, and you will dance in perfect time. I will see you there, in the shadow of the jumbled stone, from a distant vantage, from memories you leave, in the warmth hold of my heart, so that if I am alone, I still will not be lonely.
Lovely.
Have I got time for one more?
One more, sir. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. This is what might be called a post bucket list item. If there is one poem out of the 1,000 some that I've published in the last almost 60 years that I want to be remembered for, if anybody remembers me, it's going to be this one. So that's on the post bucket list. Elegy. Dig the small grave and place the smaller body so, just so. The chill May rain and the warm human tears falling on her head will serve for the ritual washing of this pup, barely 2 days old. Some future digger after truth, alien or human, kneeling with trowel and brush at this grave, will note in clear, careful script the wonder that a people would be so deliberate with the smallest of their God's creatures and so careless of themselves.
Bravo, sir. Bravo.
Thank you. Thank you.
My friend, you're so eloquent and you deal with such important matters of the heart, of life. I can't thank you enough for sharing with us. I will ask you one more question.
Sure.
If a young person came up to you and said, you know, occasionally I'm infected with poetry and I wonder, should I spurn it or should I indulge in it?
I would tell that young person basically what I occasionally tell crowds at an open mic. Welcome to Poets Anonymous. And I don't want to be cured.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Follow the muse, you know? Yeah. It's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you.
Likewise, my friend, likewise. And I look forward to seeing you at some future Zoom scape and would love to have you back again, okay?
Sounds great.
Thank you, brother.
care.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.